The ancient rabbis who wrote the Talmud understood something about debt that modern financial institutions have spent billions trying to make you forget. They saw debt not as a tool for prosperity, but as a form of voluntary servitude that fundamentally alters the relationship between human beings. While banks frame borrowing as empowerment, as access, as opportunity, the Talmudic scholars described it with a word that translates directly to enslavement. This wasn't metaphor. This wasn't exaggeration. This was precise legal and spiritual language meant to warn future generations about what happens when you exchange your freedom for immediate gratification. The Talmud states explicitly that a borrower becomes a servant to the lender. Not a customer, not a partner. A servant. Think about the weight of that distinction. When you sign a loan agreement, you're not entering a neutral transaction. You're subordinating your future labor, your future choices, your future peace of mind to someone else's terms. The rabbis understood that debt creates a power imbalance so profound that it corrupts the natural order of human dignity. Every month you make a payment, you're sending the fruits of your work to someone who did nothing but sign a document. Your time, your energy, your life force flowing away to service an obligation you created in a moment of weakness or desire. I want to know where in the world you're watching this from. Comment below. Because this wisdom transcends cultures and centuries, yet every society keeps falling into the same trap. Here's what makes the Talmudic perspective so dangerous to modern finance. The rabbis didn't just warn against debt. They created actual systems to prevent its accumulation. The concept of Shemitah, the sabbatical year, mandated that every 7 years all debts between Jews were forgiven, completely erased. Imagine that framework in today's world. Imagine credit card companies knowing that every 7 years the slate gets wiped clean. The entire predatory lending industry would collapse overnight. Because the system doesn't work if people get periodic fresh starts. The system requires perpetual obligation, endless servitude, generation after generation trapped in cycles they inherited or created in moments of desperation. Banks don't teach you that the Talmud considered lending at interest to your own community members a fundamental violation of human solidarity. They called it Neshekh, which literally means a bite, like a serpent's bite. The imagery is deliberate. Interest doesn't just take money, it injects poison into relationships, into communities, into the social fabric itself. When you profit from someone else's need, when you extract wealth from their vulnerability, you're not engaging in business, you're feeding on weakness. The ancient scholars saw this clearly. They understood that a society where people profit from each other's misfortune cannot maintain cohesion or genuine prosperity. Consider how different your life would look right now without debt. Not just without the payments, but without the psychological burden. Without waking up knowing that a portion of everything you earn is already spoken for. Without that background anxiety that colors every financial decision. Without the shame that comes from being unable to meet obligations you once confidently assumed. The Talmud recognized that debt doesn't just take your money, it takes your mental freedom. It occupies space in your consciousness every single day. You become less yourself and more a function of your obligations. Modern financial institutions have perverted the language around debt so thoroughly that most people don't even recognize the manipulation. They call it leverage. They call it building credit. They call it good debt versus bad debt, as if any form of servitude can be categorized as beneficial. The Talmudic view cuts through this propaganda with brutal clarity. All debt is servitude. Some servitude might be temporarily necessary, but none of it is good. None of it enhances your life in any real sense. It merely allows you to consume now what you haven't earned yet, and that exchange always costs more than the price tag suggests. Look at how the system perpetuates itself through your children. Student loans that burden people before they've even started their adult lives. Mortgages that span 30 years, ensuring that people spend their most productive decades working primarily to enrich banks. Car loans that reset every few years as people trade one depreciating asset for another, never actually owning anything. Credit cards with interest rates that would have been called usury in any previous era, now normalized and marketed as convenience. The Talmud would recognize this immediately as institutionalized oppression. a system designed to extract maximum wealth from maximum people, while convincing them they're participating in prosperity. The rabbis also understood something about the lender that modern discourse completely ignores. When you lend at interest, you corrupt yourself. You train yourself to see other people's needs as profit opportunities. You develop a stake in their continued obligation. The Talmud warns that this poisons the lender's soul just as surely as it enslaves the borrower. This is why usury was prohibited, not just regulated. Because any amount of interest, any profit from lending, begins the corruption. Banks exist in a state of permanent moral corruption by this standard. Institutions whose entire purpose is the thing the Talmud identified as fundamentally poisonous to human community. What would it take for you to become completely debt-free? Not someday, not eventually, but as your primary organizing financial goal. Most people have never seriously calculated this. They've accepted debt as a permanent feature of existence, like gravity or weather. But the Talmudic perspective demands you see it as the emergency it actually is. Every day you remain in debt is a day you're serving someone else's interests with your labor. Every payment you make is freedom you're purchasing back at inflated prices. The math is simple, even if the execution is hard. Stop accumulating new debt immediately. Attack existing debt with every spare dollar. Restructure your entire life around liberation, not consumption. Banks have convinced society that debt enables dreams. The Talmud understood that debt destroys them. You cannot build genuine wealth while servicing debt. You cannot achieve real security while obligated to creditors. You cannot experience true peace while carrying the psychological burden of what you owe. Every financial guru who tells you that some debt is fine, that leverage is smart, that you can manage it responsibly, is selling you a comfortable lie. The ancient wisdom is uncomfortable but true. Debt is servitude. Servitude is incompatible with the full expression of human dignity and potential. The most insidious part of modern debt culture is how it's normalized the idea that you should pay for tomorrow's consumption with today's promises. The Talmud emerged from a culture that understood delayed gratification, that valued living within your means, that saw dignity in modest circumstances honestly maintained. We've lost that completely. Now people feel entitled to lifestyles they haven't earned, experiences they can't afford, status symbols purchased with borrowed money. And the system encourages this because every transaction generates profit for the lenders. Your weakness becomes their revenue stream. Your inability to delay gratification becomes their quarterly earnings report. Here's the truth that will either free you or offend you. You're not entitled to anything you haven't earned yet. You're not entitled to a house you can't buy with cash. You're not entitled to a car you can't afford. You're not entitled to a lifestyle your income doesn't support. The Talmudic framework is harsh because reality is harsh. Debt doesn't change the underlying math. It just shifts when you pay the price and adds interest for the privilege. Every single thing you buy with borrowed money costs more than its sticker price. And that additional cost is your freedom converted into dollars and transferred to someone else. Those who recognize that everything you've been taught about debt is designed to benefit lenders, not borrowers, will drop this in the comments. Freedom has no payment plan. That phrase captures the entire Talmudic wisdom in 6 words. You cannot purchase your way to liberation through obligations. You cannot borrow your way to security. The only path to genuine financial freedom is through rejecting the debt paradigm entirely, through rebuilding your life on a foundation of what you actually have, rather than what you think you deserve. You just accessed wisdom that survived 3,000 years because it's true in every era, every culture, every economic system. The Talmudic scholars saw through the deception that modern marketing departments spend billions perpetuating. This channel exists to deliver exactly this kind of uncomfortable truth that transforms how you see the world, once you really absorb it. Subscribe now because the next piece of ancient financial wisdom I'm bringing you makes this look like surface-level understanding. What I'm revealing next exposes the deepest deception in modern economics, something so fundamental that once you see it, you'll never look at money the same way again. Don't miss it.